The introduction, the authority of truth. The power of the human intellect is not a static resource. It is a fragile ecosystem under constant siege. Welcome to a special edition masterclass on Fluent Minds. Today we are not discussing mere distraction. We are analyzing the systematic deconstruction of your intelligence. This analysis is grounded in the rigorous research of 3 fundamental works, books that have redefined our understanding of the modern mind. First, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, a manifesto for reclaiming focus in a noisy world. Second, Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke, a deep dive into the neurobiology of addiction and reward. And third, Stolen Focus by Johann Hari, a revelation of the systemic forces that have harvested our collective attention. These authors reveal a terrifying truth. Your smartphone is not a tool, it is a biological hijacker. We must begin by confronting the reality of cognitive erosion. The human brain evolved over millions of years to navigate a world of physical challenges and linear time. Our ancestors survived because they possessed the capacity for sustained attention. Tracking a prey for days, navigating vast terrains, and building complex tools required a brain that could remain fixed on a single goal. This is what we call the deep brain. An architecture built for linearity and focus. Volume 1. The Architecture of the Theft. However, in the last 2 decades, we have introduced a technology that is neurologically incompatible with our species. The smartphone is the first device in history designed to exploit the brain's primitive vulnerabilities for profit. As Cal Newport argues, big tech companies have employed attention engineers. These are people trained in Las Vegas casino psychology, specifically to rewire your neural pathways. They have turned the neurology of survival into a mechanism of perpetual consumption. Every time you glance at your screen, you are not just wasting time, you are incurring a cognitive tax. Research indicates that the mere presence of a smartphone reduces your working memory capacity. This means that even if you are not using the phone, a part of your brain is actively working to ignore it. This constant suppression consumes the mental energy required for high-level logic and complex problem-solving. In Stolen Focus, Johann Hari reveals that our attention did not collapse. It was stolen by design. We are living in a state of continuous partial attention, where deep thought is no longer possible. This is the invisible IQ thief. It is a silent assassin that robs you of your potential before you even realize it is gone. We must examine the fragmentation of time. In the pre-digital era, human attention was like a steady stream, flowing in one direction. Today, that stream has been shattered into a billion disconnected droplets. The concept of attention residue is critical here. Every time you check a notification, your brain must perform a cognitive reset. It must shut down one neural network and activate another. This process is not instantaneous. It leaves a residue of the previous task in your working memory. By the time you return to your deep work, your functional intelligence has temporarily dropped by 15%. You are not just distracted, you are temporarily becoming less intelligent. If you want to reclaim your power, you must first recognize the magnitude of the loss. This is the 24-hour reset protocol, the only way to rehabilitate a shattered intellect. Volume 2. The Neurobiology of the Fragmented Brain. To understand the devastation of your intellect, we must descend into the physical rewiring of your neural pathways. Johann Hari, in his seminal work Stolen Focus, argues that our attention spans are not just shrinking. They are being systematically shattered by a structural assault. Every time you switch from a deep, cognitively demanding task to a digital notification, you are performing what neuroscientists call a cognitive jump. This jump is far from free. It comes with a heavy biological price, known as the switch cost effect. When you move your attention from work to a message, your brain doesn't just switch, like a light bulb. It must physically reorient its entire neural architecture. Researchers have discovered that this reorientation process consumes massive amounts of oxygenated glucose. Glucose is the primary fuel of your prefrontal cortex, the seat of human logic, reasoning, and executive function. By the time you attempt to return to your original task, your brain's fuel tank is already depleted. A study conducted at Carnegie Mellon University revealed a shocking reality. Interrupted office workers performed 20% worse on cognitive tests than those who were allowed to focus. This is not a minor fluctuation. It is the equivalent of losing 10 to 15 points from your IQ in an instant. We are literally driving ourselves into a state of artificial stupidity for the sake of perpetual connectivity. Furthermore, we must confront the concept of attention residue, a term coined by Dr. Sophie Leroy. When you leave a task to check your phone, your brain does not leave that task entirely. A portion of your cognitive bandwidth remains anchored to that last email, that last comment, or that last tweet. Your neural pathways are still processing the residue of the digital input while you are trying to think deeply. This fragmentation prevents the brain from reaching the flow state, the peak human experience where creativity reaches its maximum potential. To enter flow, the brain requires an uninterrupted window of at least 20 minutes. But in the modern world, we are interrupted every 47 seconds. We are witnessing the extinction of deep human thought. Without flow, original ideas cannot form. Without flow, your intelligence remains shallow. You are physically losing the capacity to think because you have trained your brain to be fragmented. Volume 3. The Dopamine Seesaw and the Death of Joy. While Johann Hari focuses on the theft of attention, Dr. Anna Lembke, in her work Dopamine Nation, focuses on the corruption of your internal reward system. To rebuild your IQ, you must understand the delicate balance of pleasure and pain. The human brain operates on a neurological seesaw. For 2 million years, dopamine was the molecule of motivation, not just pleasure. It was designed to drive our ancestors to do the hard work necessary for survival: hunting, gathering, and building. In the wild, rewards were scarce and required immense physical and mental effort. Today we have replaced that struggle with the ease of the infinite scroll. We are flooding our brains with digital dopamine at a rate that is biologically unprecedented. Every notification and every like creates a neurochemical spike. The brain, seeking stability, immediately attempts to counteract this spike. It tilts the seesaw toward the side of pain to maintain balance. This is the neurological explanation for the restlessness and the brain fog you feel the moment you close an app. If you repeatedly flood your system with artificial stimulation, your brain undergoes downregulation. It physically withdraws its dopamine receptors to protect itself from the toxic overload. The result is a state of chronic dopamine deficit. Nothing in the analog world can compete with the intensity of the digital hit. Reading a complex philosophy book becomes physically painful because the neural reward is too slow. Deep learning becomes a form of torture because the payoff is too far in the future. We have created a generation of anhedonic minds. Brains that can no longer find joy in the process of focus. And a brain that cannot find joy in focus is a brain that can no longer develop its intelligence. Volume 4. The Digital Minimalist Defense. In the 4th volume of our Masterclass, we transition from the biological damage to the strategic defense. In his seminal work, Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport argues that the modern crisis of attention is not merely a lack of discipline. It is a fundamental lack of philosophy. Most people approach technology like a casual user, but the algorithm approaches you like a predator. Newport introduces a radical proposition. You must stop viewing technology as a neutral tool and start viewing it as a cognitive architecture that shapes your reality. Every app on your phone is not just a convenience. It is a fragment of someone else's intention, inserted into your consciousness. The essence of digital minimalism is not about removing technology, it is about rebuilding the walls of your internal life. We must confront what Newport calls the convenience trap. Big tech has convinced us that if a tool provides even a minor benefit, it is worth having. But this is a logical fallacy that destroys your IQ. A tool might provide a 5% benefit in terms of information, while requiring a 50% tax on your cognitive bandwidth. Minimalism is the act of ruthlessly calculating the opportunity cost of your attention. Newport suggests that the human brain was never designed to be in constant contact with other minds. We are currently witnessing the death of cognitive solitude, the sacred state in which your mind is alone with its own thoughts. When you eliminate every moment of boredom with a screen, you are eliminating the brain's capacity for original synthesis. Solitude is the laboratory of genius. Without it, you are merely an echo of the digital noise around you. The architecture of defense requires you to adopt the craftsman's approach to technology. A craftsman does not use a tool just because it is available. He uses it only if it is the best possible instrument for his work. Are you a craftsman of your own intellect? Or are you a consumable product for the advertising machine? To reclaim your intelligence, you must practice intentional friction. The goal of the algorithm is to remove all friction, to make scrolling effortless and thinking optional. Your defense must be to reintroduce friction. Delete the apps that exploit your dopamine. Access them only through a browser on a laptop. Force yourself to work for the information. By increasing the difficulty of consumption, you decrease the frequency of addiction. This is the beginning of cognitive sovereignty. Volume 5. The Global Attention Crisis. While we have analyzed the individual struggle, Johann Hari, in Stolen Focus, reveals a darker, systemic truth. We are not just suffering from a personal lack of willpower. We are surviving a global, environmental catastrophe of the mind. Hari argues that the collapse of human attention is analogous to the climate crisis. It is not caused by a single factor, but by a constellation of powerful forces working in tandem to dismantle our collective intellect. We must first examine the surveillance capitalism model. Companies like Meta and Google do not profit from the quality of your life. They profit only when you are on their platforms. Therefore, their entire research and development departments, staffed by the world's most brilliant neuroscientists, are dedicated to one single goal: keeping you distracted. An addicted brain is a profitable brain. A focused brain, capable of independent thought and deep work, is a threat to their bottom line. Hari interviewed the very engineers who built the infinite scroll and the like button. They admit that these tools were designed to trigger the same brain regions as cocaine and slot machines. We are trying to fight a billion-dollar supercomputer with a prehistoric brain. It is a war that you cannot win with willpower alone. But the crisis goes deeper than software. We must analyze the impact of our modern environment on our cognitive capacity. The rise of processed foods and high-sugar diets creates chronic inflammation in the brain. An inflamed brain is a foggy brain. A brain lacking proper nutrients cannot maintain the neural pathways required for sustained concentration. Furthermore, the collapse of physical play and the disappearance of slow time are rewiring the next generation for hyperreactivity. We have created a society that can no longer endure the slowness of real life. In Stolen Focus, Hari reveals that even the physical pollution in our cities is degrading our cognitive performance. We are living in a toxic ecosystem for the human intellect. To reclaim your IQ, you must see the war in its entirety. It is not enough to simply put down your phone. You must rebuild your entire cognitive environment. You must protect your brain from the noise, the chemical poisons, and the digital manipulation. If you do not actively defend your consciousness, the system will continue to harvest it until there is nothing left. Volume 6. The Biological Liquidation. The final frontier of your intelligence is not your willpower. It is your biological maintenance. Johann Hari, in Stolen Focus, reveals a terrifying correlation. As our screen time increases, our collective sleep capacity is being liquidated. This is not just about feeling tired. This is about the physical degradation of your neural tissue. To understand why your IQ is plummeting, you must understand the glymphatic system. This is the brain's internal waste management system. While you sleep, the brain physically shrinks its cells to allow cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic waste. This waste includes beta-amyloid proteins, the toxins linked to Alzheimer's and permanent cognitive decline. If you do not reach deep, sustained sleep, this waste accumulates. A brain that has not slept is a brain trapped in its own toxic debris. Dr. Anna Lembke, in Dopamine Nation, adds another layer to this crisis. The blue light from your smartphone is not just a visual input. It is a neurochemical command. It signals to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is daylight, suppressing the release of melatonin. But the harm goes deeper than light. It is the cognitive hyperarousal caused by the content. Every time you scroll before bed, you are engaging your brain in a high-stakes emotional lottery. A shocking news story, a hateful comment, or a high-stimulus video triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline. You are asking your brain to go to war moments before you ask it to rest. The result is what neuroscientists call sleep fragmentation. You may be unconscious for 8 hours, but your brain has never entered the deep stages of repair. Research cited in Stolen Focus shows that if you sleep 6 hours a night for 2 weeks, your cognitive performance drops to the level of someone who has been awake for 48 hours straight. You are operating in a state of permanent concussion. Your IQ is not gone. It is simply buried under a layer of neurological trash. A sleep-deprived brain is physically incapable of focus. The prefrontal cortex, your logical engine, is the first part of the brain to shut down under sleep debt. Without it, you are driven entirely by your primitive amygdala. You become more impulsive, more anxious, and more susceptible to the addictive loops of the algorithm. Big tech companies know this. They know that the tired brain has no defenses. They profit from your exhaustion because an exhausted human is an uncritical consumer. To reclaim your intelligence, you must treat your sleep as a sacred act of cognitive resistance. Volume 7. The Architecture of Deep Reading. To rebuild an IQ that has been shattered by the digital void, we must return to the most powerful neurotechnology ever invented. The book. Johann Hari, in Stolen Focus, warns of a catastrophic decline in our capacity for what he calls linear reading. This is not merely a change in a hobby. It is the collapse of a sophisticated neural circuitry that took humanity thousands of years to develop. Reading a book is physically and neurologically different from reading a screen. When you read on a smartphone, your brain is in scanning mode. You are looking for keywords, bullet points, and quick hits of information. This is shallow reading. It uses the same brain regions as survival tracking. It is quick, reactive, and superficial. In contrast, deep reading is a form of intensive cognitive gymnastics. It requires the brain to construct a virtual world, to hold complex narratives in working memory, and to synthesize abstract ideas over hundreds of pages. According to research cited by Cal Newport in Digital Minimalism, deep reading activates the deep thinking circuitry that the internet has rendered dormant. We must discuss the synaptic pruning of the modern brain. The brain is highly efficient. If you do not use the neural pathways for deep concentration, the brain will literally prune them away to save energy. Every time you choose a 15-second video over a 15-page chapter, you are telling your brain that depth is no longer necessary. The result is the loss of cognitive endurance. This is the ability to stay with a single difficult idea for hours, without seeking escape. This is the hallmark of the high IQ individual. In Stolen Focus, Hari reveals that the average person is reading fewer books every year. This is not just a statistic. It is a death sentence for critical thinking. Without the capacity for long-form narrative, we lose the ability to understand cause and effect. We become trapped in a perpetual, now, reacting to disconnected fragments of data. To reclaim your intelligence, you must perform a neural reconstruction through analog immersion. During the 24-hour reset, the book is your primary tool for rehabilitation. When you force yourself to read a dense text, you are rewiring your prefrontal cortex. You are strengthening the myelin sheath around the axons responsible for sustained attention. Dr. Anna Lembke, in Dopamine Nation, explains that this process will feel painful at first. This pain is the withdrawal of the dopamine-addicted brain. Your brain is screaming for the easy stimulation of the screen. But if you endure the discomfort, your brain begins to tilt back to balance. You reach the deep reading flow, a state where the world disappears and your intellectual capacity expands. This is the moment your functional IQ begins to rise. You are no longer just consuming information. You are building the neural architecture of wisdom. Volume 8. The Myth of the Efficiency Machine. We must now expose the most sophisticated lie of the digital age, the promise of the multitasking superhuman. We have been conditioned to believe that the ability to juggle dozens of tabs, hundreds of notifications, and multiple streams of data is a mark of modern intelligence. In reality, it is a neurological suicide mission. In Stolen Focus, Johann Hari reveals that the human brain has not changed in 40,000 years. Our biological hardware is physically incapable of multitasking. What we perceive as parallel processing is, in fact, rapid task switching. A brutal, high-speed friction that tears at your cognitive fibers. As Cal Newport discusses in Digital Minimalism, the brain operates on a sequential architecture. It is designed to devote 100% of its neural firing to a single, focused goal. Every time you switch from a complex problem to a quick text message, you trigger the switch cost effect. This is not a minor delay, it is a massive cognitive drain. Your brain must unload the neural context of your work, and load the neural context of the distraction. This process consumes the very glucose your prefrontal cortex needs to think. During this transition, your functional IQ collapses. Research at the University of London found that multitasking with technology causes a greater IQ drop than smoking marijuana or losing a full night's sleep. But the true danger lies in attention residue. Dr. Sophie Leroy's research proves that even after you stop looking at the distraction, a part of your brain remains trapped there. Your neural pathways are still looping on the last email or the last piece of digital outrage. This means that for the rest of the hour, you are operating with only a fraction of your brain power. The rest is wasted on residue. This is why the modern worker feels exhausted at the end of the day, despite having accomplished nothing of substance. You have spent all your energy on the friction of switching, leaving nothing for the depth of thinking. Dr. Anna Lembke in Dopamine Nation explains that this fragmentation is addictive. The brain craves the novelty spike of the switch. We have become addicted to the act of being busy, mistaking it for the act of being productive. We are training our brains to be superficial by design. We are developing what some call acquired ADHD, a state where the brain has lost the physical capacity to remain on a single pathway. A high IQ individual is not someone who can do many things at once. A high IQ individual is someone who can do one thing for 4 hours without looking away. The 24-hour reset is the protocol to kill the multitasking myth and rebuild the neural pathways that have been atrophied by constant switching. To be efficient is to be focused. Everything else is just noise. Volume 9. The Collapse of Cognitive Solitude. We must now discuss the death of the most fertile ground for human genius, the state of absolute solitude. In Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport defines solitude not as a physical state, but as a neurological one. It is the absence of input from other minds. For the first time in human history, we have eliminated the gap between thought and input. Every moment of boredom, every second of waiting, and every instant of silence is now filled with the digital chatter of the global brain. This is a catastrophic loss for your IQ, because the brain requires the absence of input to engage in what is known as default mode processing. The default mode network is a vast neural circuit that activates when the brain is at rest. It is during this state that your brain consolidates memories, synthesizes disconnected ideas, and performs the complex emotional audit necessary for mental clarity. As Johann Hari argues in Stolen Focus, when you kill boredom with a smartphone, you are systemically killing your originality. Boredom is the neurological incubator for creativity. It is the moment when the brain, deprived of external stimulation, begins to generate its own internal world. Without the capacity to be alone with your own thoughts, you lose the ability to have your own thoughts. You become a mere reflection of the algorithmic feed, a collection of borrowed opinions and recycled ideas. Dr. Anna Lembke in Dopamine Nation explains that constant connectivity keeps us in a state of cognitive hypervigilance. We are always anticipating the next input, the next ping, the next vibration. This keeps the brain's fear center, the amygdala, in a state of chronic low-level stress. This stress inhibits the higher brain, or the neocortex. Your intelligence cannot flourish in a state of vigilance. Genius requires the brain to feel safe enough to wander into the unknown. The 24-hour reset is, at its core, a return to cognitive solitude. It is the moment you disconnect from the global noise to re-establish the connection with your own intellect. You are giving your brain the space to breathe, to reorganize, and to heal. To reclaim your IQ, you must learn to protect your internal monologue from the external voices of the internet. You must become the master of your own silence. In this silence, you will find the ideas that the algorithm could never provide. Volume 10. The Protocol of the Cognitive Elite. The final volume of this masterclass is not an ending. It is a declaration of war. We have analyzed the theft of your attention, the corruption of your chemistry, the erosion of your biology, and the collapse of your solitude. Now, you must decide if you have the strength to join the cognitive elite. The divide in the 21st century is no longer geographic or financial. It is neurological. On one side is the fragmented Massachusetts, people whose minds are scattered, whose IQ is depleted, and whose destiny is written by an algorithm designed for profit. On the other side is the cognitive elite, those who possess the rare and powerful ability to protect their focus in an age of infinite noise. This elite class operates on a protocol of ruthless intentionality, synthesized from the core principles of our 3 primary texts. To join them, you must commit to 4 non-negotiable pillars. First, the analog morning. You must refuse to give your most valuable cognitive hours to the machine. As Cal Newport suggests, the first 3 hours of your day are sacred. This is when your brain is flushed of toxins, and your prefrontal cortex is at peak capacity. Use this window for analog depth, reading, writing, or solving your most complex problems. If you touch your phone before your work is done, you have already lost the day. Second, friction architecture. You must stop relying on willpower and start relying on environment. If an app is designed to be addictive, willpower is a weak defense. You must create intentional friction. Delete the addictive platforms from your phone, and access them only through a browser on a laptop. Force your brain to work for its stimulation. Make it hard to be distracted and easy to remain focused. Third, the dopamine audit. As Dr. Anna Lembke advises, you must embrace the pain of effort to restore your dopamine balance. Intentionally choose the hard path. Seek rewards that require a struggle, the dense book, the long-form project, or physical exercise. By choosing the pain of effort, you tilt your neural seesaw back toward a state where you can once again find joy in simple focus. Fourth, systemic defense. As Johann Hari argues, you must protect your biological infrastructure. This means treating your sleep as a sacred act of neurological repair, and your nutrition as the fuel for your intellect. You are not a robot. You are a biological organism. If the hardware is broken, the software of your intelligence will never run correctly. The 24-hour reset is your initiation into this higher level of consciousness. It is the moment you decide that your intelligence is not a commodity for sale. You are no longer the product. You are the producer. You are no longer the slave. You are the sovereign architect of your own attention. The invisible IQ thief is only powerful as long as he remains invisible. Now that you have seen his methods, he has no power over you. Reclaim your focus. Reclaim your intelligence. Reclaim your humanity. Stay fluent. Stay focused. Stay powerful.